Hi, I'm David Bell. Welcome to part 1 of 6 on leading worship for the 21st century. Let's start by trying to get a bird's eye view of worship. There are over 1 billion Christians spread across the world. They worship in hundreds of different languages and dialects. Their customs and cultures are all different, and so also the spirituality and their understandings of God, Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit. Clearly, no one pattern of worship is universal. The art and craft of telling the Christian story recognises that and adapts to it. And the preacher and worship leader at any given location or landing spot will wisely slot into the local terrain. But there are some elements of worship that do appear in most lands and cultures. First, there's usually singing and music, and sometimes dancing to accompany worship. Then there are prayers and readings from the Bible. The communion, or sometimes called Eucharist or Mass, is celebrated. There are usually some teachings, either in sermons or talks, which may include different age groups. Sometimes gifts and experiences are shared, and usually an offering's made for some aspects of Christian work. And some kind of blessings made also when the gathering's finished in a way as needed to round things off. Sometimes congregations want to wrap all this up into one single Sunday worship event and repeat it every Sunday, week in and week out and for century upon century. And that's both the glory of Christian worship and the bane of it. Leading worship and preaching every week, to do it well, but possibly failing to do it well, are the two sides of the one coin. As preachers and worship leaders, we do need to get a better grasp of how to do it well. The best place to begin that is with ourselves as leaders. So you want to preach and lead worship? Well, congratulations, for this can be a sublime and influential art and craft to become involved with. Let's go straight to the first tip for new hands and old. Worship leaders and preachers are theologians, even though they mightn't initially recognize it. To lead worship is to give a theological lead to the people who gather. To preach is similarly about giving a theological lead. Consider it this way: Christian worship is about a meeting or an event with the aim of giving some time for God and some time for others. These events are filled with sights, sounds and sensations that are about God. The speech you use as a leader is about God. The images that are evoked are about God. The reflections, prayers and preaching are designed, and I emphasize that word designed, to bring people to a greater God awareness. Theology, which as you know literally means God talk from the Greek, theology is how we reflect upon the data, the raw experience of the people of the community which gathers to worship. Hence, when you conduct worship, you inevitably think theologically. Unfortunately, theology is usually thought of as a subject for clergy or academic professionals, taught in a theological college or university. This perception of theology as more of an academic exercise than anything else means it's viewed with suspicion. Sometimes it's seen as being too difficult for almost everyone in the congregation, yet nothing could be further from the truth. John Wesley preached up a religious revival across a nation with the help of his lay preachers, who are asked to become theological leaders, influencers of thought and opinion, from small congregations and groups to large. Always he wanted and expected more of these helpers who were his leaders. They had to be widely read, and that's as necessary today as it was then. Theology ranges over the whole spectrum of human concerns which bring people together to the act of worship. Concerns from the theoretical to the practical, from suffering to joy, from pain to pleasure. How these are reflected on in relation to God is doing theology in worship. Hence, the worship leader needs to address theological themes in worship, even if there's no sermon. He or she must begin to think like a theologian. At first, this may seem a difficult task, an impossible task, especially if leading worship is new to you. But if you think of theology as practical, even a beginning worship leader can structure the worship to help. All your Christian life you've been doing theology. A few well-chosen words from life experience will carry a lot of weight and have the potential to become memorable to the hearer. A golden rule is less words, not more. Less words can strike deep chords of response and set the tone for all that occurs in the worship event. A word on preaching from one of the great church leaders ever, Martin Luther. He said, "A preacher should have the skill to teach the unlearned simply, roundly and plainly, for teaching's of more importance than exhorting." So your first task as a beginning worship leader is to discern what theological theme do you want to present and how will you teach it. The place to get your overarching theme is, of course, the lectionary. The lectionary is the theme generator, the helicopter which can whisk you up to the overview for the occasion. Use the lectionary wisely. After that, once you have your theme, then the tasks of choosing music, prayers, reading and so on will flow from it. But remember, less words, not more. Know your audience and know your theme and pare it back so they can see what you want to teach, what you want to communicate. You can find some handy resources in the About section of this video. Join me next week when we look at prayers. And thanks very much for watching.